Hi, and welcome to Hearsay. I'm Diane Neal, and with me, as always, is my trusty companion, Danny. Danny, how you doing today?
Hey, Diane. I'm good. How are you?
All right. I mean, I think we're both a little somber. As you know, this previous week of decisions of the Supreme Court have been overwhelmingly negative for those of us that enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
For those of us that value our Fourth Amendment rights, yeah, this was a pretty devastating week. I kind of have mixed feelings because it's Pride weekend. Generally, I'm super happy this weekend, and I am, but it's kind of bittersweet because, as I'm sure you're aware,
Yeah.
as part of the ruling, one of the things that Clarence Thomas had stated.
Oh,
Was
Crazy
that
Thomas with his little extra bit that he added in.
some insane stuff. Basically, he wants to revisit the rulings for whether the right to use contraception is constitutionally guaranteed as part of your rights to medical privacy. So if in married couples, he says, I'm not sure that they do have the right to use contraception in the privacy of their own home. He wants to revisit Lawrence v. Texas, which made it illegal to criminalize homosexuality.
Right.
He wants to revisit gay marriage, of course.
Obergefell?
He wants to undo it all. He wants us to be basically the Handmaid's Tale. So, that's just a whole new level of crazy, and this is kind of what we're up against. So
it's horrifying, and obviously we knew this was coming down the pike, but when it actually happens, it's so shocking, and especially as anyone that they're going up against, right? Because it's not even as a woman, because obviously all this other stuff is on the cards, because especially Clarence Thomas clearly stated what he was going for. It's like being punched in the sternum. It takes your breath away. I felt that way when Trump was elected. And not because I'm some dyed-in-the-wool Democrat that only wants a Democrat to win, but because of his insanity and illogical policy ideas and the very insane stuff that he stated he would do, that he did do. And it was so weird to think. I felt so unwelcome in my own country as a woman that he could be elected. And then it's so crazy because, and not that, Hillary was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but man, they're like chalk and cheese, like not even in the same category.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels the same way when all these rights, even like in Florida with the don't say gay, but it's just insanity that, this is the first constitutional right that's ever been stripped from people. And to say it's not what the founders had in mind, I was talking to gentleman caller about this last night. We were having a bit of a debate, and he was saying that he cares about the institutions, and he's like, well, are people going to follow the institutions? And I'm like, look, the history of this is incredibly clear. Every time the Supreme Court has made a heinous decision, of which they've made many, think about like Brown versus the Board of Education. People do not comply. They rise up, they fight. They don't do it because it's not okay until it changes for the better. The Supreme Court isn't infallible, even when they were much more perfect than they are now. And the court has always changed. Like people talk about like, oh, we can't expand the court. The court's been expanded, I think, 4 times at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And, all these damn originalists like Scalia that, like, I am going back to what the original founding fathers thought. You want to know what they thought? So like when I was getting ready to run for Congress, I read Plato's Republic. Through the millennia, every political thing, Montesquieu, Rousseau, right? Adam Smith, you name it, twice. Twice, because I wanted to know what the founders originally intended and follow that, right? That's one reason I got rid of a political party. They didn't believe in political parties. They didn't exist. And even Thomas Jefferson, he said that the Constitution should be revisited every 17 years and revised. That's what the founding fathers thought. And he picked 17 years, which seems rather arbitrary, but it was like half a generation, where things would change and adjust, and it would need to be revisited. It isn't a perfect document, and it's a document meant to be interpreted as times change and as things change, and things are supposed to progress, move in an upward trajectory, not regress by such a massive amounts. And it makes me so sad for young women. I'm 45. Like, the chance that I'm going to get knocked up at this age is like pretty slim to none. Like, it's I'm a 45-year-old.
I don't know. You look like a fertile myrtle to me.
I'm also Mormon, so think about what is implied with that as well too. So there's very little chance I'm gonna have some sort of immaculate conception, right? Like, it's not happening. So, but what makes me so sad are these untold futures that are going to be irreparably harmed by people who so obviously didn't consider them at all.
The women that will die, I mean, are they going to start actually filing criminal charges against people? Like what is going to happen?
Because
it really is going to feel like we're in the 50s again.
Right. And stopping, even worse, stopping interstate travel.
Yeah. That's insane. Restricting travel on people.
Yeah.
So one thing that I find, one thing that I'm wondering is all of these Supreme Court justices that voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, they all in their hearings, after they were nominated, said that they wouldn't overturn it if it ever came up.
So they lied.
So they lied to Congress to get into the positions that they're in.
Yeah.
Right? They would had they told the truth, they wouldn't have gotten into those positions. So what does that mean? Like, what?
I know,
at what
Danny,
point do we say, hey, because you got into the office through means
deception.
Through deception, like, is that grounds for impeachment?
You would think it is, but then again, you got to have a Congress with the balls to take it up, right?
You have to have the political capital.
And I think expanding the court is actually a really good option. But then you've got like idiots like Joe Manchin who are just like, oh, we can't do. And it's like, again, it's been done repeatedly. This isn't like the first time. Like, the original Supreme Court didn't have 9 people on it. Things change. They vacillate. That's how they're supposed to go. And so all this like pretend posturing that like, oh, we're just standing up for the Constitution as it was meant to be. Obviously not. If it really was, it'd be changed every 17 years like the founders wanted, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're just in such a precarious position because already, like, okay, when you look at certain past dictatorships, really bad ones, one of the ways that they remain in power is when you have a severe imbalance of how much a person's vote counts, right? So if you look at, for instance, Pot Pol of Cambodia, who committed one of the worst genocides in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
The way that he was able to stay in power, despite the fact that he was so unpopular, is because the way their electoral map worked at the time was rural votes mattered more than urban ones. And where, like, the way that the US is set up inherently follows that same structure, right?
It does.
So we also have the issue of basically states like Wyoming, 300,000 people having the same amount of sway as states like California in the Senate,
Right.
So it's a complicated situation that we're in, I think, where we really have to start thinking about, hey, like,
how
the ruling that the Supreme Court just issued is so completely at odds with the will of the people. And the presidency our last president was at odds with the will
with
of
the
the
will of the
people,
people,
and the Senate is often at odds with the will of the
will of the
people.
people.
And so I think we need to start considering what are the drastic steps that we need to take to ensure that our democracy is actually representative, right? Because
Right.
that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a representative democracy. A
Representative
oligarchy.
republic. Yeah, no, and part of that is eliminating the electoral college. It's changing the nature of the Senate. Problem is, then you have to get the votes because of the filibuster. You'd have to get enough people willing to vote against themselves. And it's interesting because people who get into a position of power, it's there's that famous quote: "Absolute power corrupts absolutely." And it is unbelievably true. People get a taste for it and they think it's real and they think it's important and they think it has to do with them. And I always wonder about these people, like, do they forget they're going to die? They're going to be, even if you don't believe in an afterlife, at some point, the stuff like that is so unimportant in the grand scheme of things, in the biblical scope of the universe, that they don't seem to care, though. And, Staceyann, so the interview today is got a really good one. I know it'll be so much fun because I want to ask you about Pride today. And, we've got a big Pride parade in New York here tomorrow on Sunday, which is, it's going to be fun. I'm going to go after church. It's going to be a good time. And, by the way, that's one thing people always ask too, which some people might be wondering, like, how can you be religious and pious, especially Mormonism, because people have such interesting ideas about Mormonism, and be okay with things like Roe versus Wade. And first of all, Mormonism is a really fun religion that is incredibly intellectual once you get into it, and spiritual. But every man is meant to work out their own salvation one-on-one with God. It's a different thing. And even in Mormonism, abortion is absolutely A-okay for rape, incest, or the health of the mother. And that includes mental health. You got 6 kids, you can't handle a 7 mentally.
Right.
It's okay. It's okay. And that's one thing I find extremely shocking too, that this court is like to the right of Mormonism. Like, that's nuts, right? And then there's
that's insane.
There's another tenet of which is one thing I know everyone gets sick of me talking about running for Congress, but like that I would explain to all the pro-lifers that being pro-life, you can individually be pro-life because that's who you're the boss of. That's who you're the boss of. You want to be pro-life? Knock yourself out for yourself. Luckily, I've never been in a position where I've had to make that decision. I don't know what I would do. But you're not the boss of anyone else. And if you're religious, the whole point of this life, the whole point of this existence is to be able to exercise your free agency, your free will. And literally, the most satanic thing you can do is to deprive others of their free agency. So even if you think it's a mistake, it is absolutely not your place to make that decision for anyone else, no matter what it is. And you're also not allowed to judge anyone else. He who is without sin cast the first stone. Like, deal with your own shit first, and then worry about other people's sins if that's what you think they are. But they're not yours to decide, and they're not yours to judge. Take care of yourself first, and let everyone else be able to exercise that gift that we all came to planet Earth for, agency, and let them live as they see fit. Because you know what? None of us have any idea what it's like to live anyone else's life. Well, who are we to say, oh, they're making the wrong decision, or I need to tell them to do this, or I'm going to ban them from doing that? Who the hell are we? Who do you think you are? Anyway, just thought I'd clear that up in case anyone was wondering.
Amen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you all say amen in Mormonism, but
we do.
I grew up Catholic,
we do.
So.
we do. There's a lot of
Catholic,
amen.
So there we go.
Everyone always forgets to, like, the real name of Mormonism is the Church of Jesus Christ. Like, so it's like, so it's the same Christian stuff. It was really funny. I went to St. Patrick's the other night to light some candles for the gentleman caller's birthday, since he is Catholic. And it was, I love going to a Catholic church because it's always so much fun to like genuflect and get the holy water and light a few candles. And I love that stuff.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah. The wine and the crackers totally make it.
although I find the body of Christ to be quite sticky to the roof of the mouth.
It depends on which church you go to.
It's true. In Mormon churches, we just use like someone brings like a loaf of bread and they break up little pieces, so it's like depends whatever
Oh,
someone brought that day. So it like could be like whole wheat, could be like a really nice sourdough,
sourdough.
It could be Wonder Bread,
I
like
love
body of
that we
Christ.
both went to sourdough.
I know
It's like the best case scenario.
I love sourdough Jesus. Like I love it's
If
the
Jesus
best.
were a bread, it would be sourdough.
I think it'd be sourdough or maybe like a
Who
Jewish
doesn't
rye,
love
because he
sourdough?
was like
Oh, that's true.
he
He
was
was a
my
little
favorite Jewish
darker.
liberal. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the thing that always cracks me up too. Like all these like Christian religions, because he was the ultimate Jewish liberal. Like he was a
Right.
hardcore, like
Oh yeah. I
total
mean, Jesus was a
nonconformist.
communist. He was at least a
Seriously,
socialist.
he was
I don't know about communist,
absolutely.
but
He was absolutely,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure, like, okay, if anyone in this world is actually Jesus Christ in disguise,
Mm.
it might be Bernie Sanders.
Oh my god.
I mean, I'm just thinking about like literally standing up against like there's so many things to be outraged about.
Oh no,
And other
yeah.
people's existence, I don't think is what Jesus would be mad about,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, no, no. Can you imagine? Like, I can imagine like Bernie Sanders like overturning the tables of the money changers in the temple, like Jesus style. Like,
Right?
what are you doing here, you usurers? Like, get out of here. This is not a
Yeah,
place for you to exchange money and bank. Like,
I
yeah,
know. What other candidate talked about usury? You know what I
like
mean?
very few. Maybe a little
No
bit
one.
Elizabeth Warren.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe using different language. I always liked Warren.
Yeah.
It's always hard to find true believers. Speaking of true believers, because I could talk to you all day and we should have some more fun about pride. But the interview today is with the amazing Staceyann Chin, who is a poet and an author and an activist and a mom and a Wonder Woman. I've known her for years, and she was so generous to take a lot of time in her really, really, really busy schedule for us to talk. And the fun thing about Staceyann is like it's never a superficial conversation. It's always to like the greatest depths of your soul, making you aware and think and concentrate and really focus on the questions being asked. I mean, she's funny. She's asking me questions, which were really interesting because she's struggling with the idea of what is home. Since she's just founded this community in Jamaica called Kindred on the Rock. So she's lived in Brooklyn for like 25 years after she escaped a lot of violence in Jamaica when she was young. And and she's finally returning and like what that means to like come home and be like a landowner and be responsible and build a
Hmm.
community and when all the decisions are yours, like how do you make everyone feel inclusive and anyway, I'm really excited for everyone to hear it, but everyone should know that Stacy, Ann, and I taped it and we ended the interview. We both got off and immediately found out about the Roe versus Wade decision. So when we were talking, we didn't know that SCOTUS had actually come down with the decision. So if anyone's like, God, you guys are a little bit cheery for what's going on, that's why. That's why.
It's from the before times.
It's from the before times. And it was wild because, right when we got off the phone, we both immediately texted each other and we're like, good God, what is happening? What is happening? And she has a daughter, she has a 10-year-old daughter. How do you raise a daughter in a place where they have less rights than we did?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Sad, sad place.
it's unfortunate because so many of these poor decisions and these decisions that others are making for the lives of others are not only not well thought out, they're born out of fear. And they're born out of fear of like the other or their own beliefs about things. Like I honestly have never understood why anyone thought it was okay to impose their ideas on anyone else. You can try and persuade, you can discuss, you can share your ideas, but to try and force anyone, I mean, that is literally the definition of Satanism. Like, it's shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's shocking to me. And somehow it's lost on those shaded, shadowy, robed figures that don't care about the real world consequences of their decisions. I mean, even the gun decision, what the hell was that about? You know, everyone's allowed to carry a gun everywhere. Super duper. Oh, I feel so much safer. Like, Danny, like, like I'm one of the smartest people I've met. She says humbly. Do you know who I would not? I don't trust myself with a gun 99% of the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, I sure as hell don't trust anyone else with a gun. You see what these crazy people do with guns? Like, they do a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do crazy stuff. And sure, it's incredibly fun. So, like, okay, say, even in like the Alec Baldwin thing, right? Yeah, sure. They're all having fun, shooting bottles and cans, you know, in the back of the set. Whoop-de-doo. It's a good time. Yeah, that's super fun. You know what the problem is? Then the cinematographer gets shot, you know, because like, that's what happens. Accidents happen, even in the best case of scenarios, in the most fun case of scenarios.
Right.
And that's a rare thing. Most of the time, it's the worst case scenario. Like Uvalde's just like, no one's paying attention to it anymore.
Yeah.
By the way, what the hell with those lies? That the door was unlocked? That they didn't go in? Did you hear that?
Right. Yeah. 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 It's one thing after the next. But you know what? That's why I'm especially excited about this interview. I haven't listened to it yet either, but I'm definitely looking forward to hearing.
I think you'll like. I think everyone else will like it too. And so everyone, I hope you really enjoy the interview. I hope we're going to post. Danny and I are going to put all of Staceyann and Kindred on the Rocks information up. If you have a chance, buy her books. Donate to Kindred on the Rock. They need all kinds of supplies and things. I actually have a storage unit upstate that's full of like tools and farm equipment. And I know it's insane. The things that I'll never use again. And we were doing shout outs. Anyone listening wants to donate the shipping for that, I will absolutely donate all of it for free. So, you know, and it's a kind of place where actually everyone listening to this, and Danny and I, we're all invited to go and chip in and participate, learn how to work with the land, like an intentional community, getting to spend time with people that are different and varied and full of poetry. Because that's what life is supposed to be, not full of this like fear, but full of poetry. It's short. You should be able to enjoy it. Anyway, thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
And everyone, enjoy the interview with Staceyann Chin. We'll see you on the other side.
That microphone is very professional.
Very professional, I know. In case anyone's wondering, Staceyann Chin and I are talking about the countdown to the interview. I am Diane Neal, and with me is Staceyann Chin. Thank you so much for being here, Stacey, because I know how insane busy you are and the crazy amount of stuff you have going on.
I think when you get to be like over 30 and definitely over 35, and if you hit 40, you're lucky enough to live until 40, you're definitely busy. Like, even when you have no job and you have no money and you have no children, things just find you. Things that need to be done just find you.
How did you just describe my life? Yeah, you got no money, you got no children, and it's just an endless parade. But even tonight's your last night at the Green Space in Brooklyn. How's it been going?
It's been astounding. The first night, I had a wonderful conversation with my partner Rachel, and we're both public people.
In case anyone was wondering, this is Rachel Cargill, who's like an astounding woman, like just like
Yeah, and very sexy and very funny and very sweet, and she loves me and I love her, and it's all great. It's very sickening for those people who happen to be around us. We're very sweet together, and we're a year in already.
Oh my God, and you're still sweet on each, like, and it's the great, there's nothing better than being in love, is there? It's like the greatest feeling in the world. And it makes everything else sparkle. Everything sparkles.
Yes. Definitely in the first year, there's a lot of sparkle. And if you're gay, you're definitely around a bunch of sparkling things. And, you know, headsets, nails, shoes, fried chicken. I mean, like, everything is sparkly when you're gay.
And you have a daughter too. So like everything's sparkly because, you know, when you're a little girl, like everything sparkles and is rainbows and fanciness. And
she's definitely not a rainbow sparkler. She's beginning to infuse like all her life, you know, all of her like 900, which is only 10 years old, like all of her 10 years on earth, she's been pushing back. And I don't know how much of that is influenced by me saying, you're a girl, you don't have to be anything, you know, being a girl doesn't mean you have to be anything. And so I'm not going to dress you in sparkles and rainbows. And she's just started to develop an appreciation for pink as a color, because it used to be, you know.
Yes. No pink, Mom. No pink,
none at all. So now she can't go with the hot pink or with the light pink. It's still only rose pink, like a dusty rose pink. But I think
that's
Rachel likes that dusty rose, and that's why she likes it. But she'll be like, "What color bags do you want, Zuri? Not pink." That's the answer. Not pink. Any other color works, but not pink. How did we meet? We have to say.
Oh my God, we met forever ago at NYU. They were doing. Do you remember we got asked to present some kind of like poetry and speeches to like the incoming class of freshmen at NYU?
Yeah, was it a Howard Zinn People Speak thing, or was it something else? And then we met again there. I can't remember, but
I can't remember.
I know I've seen you and like worked with you.
And you gave me, well, the first day we met, you gave me the book, The Other Side of Paradise, which is your first book.
Yes.
And you still haven't signed it, but it destroyed my mind. Like if anyone needs like a book, like it destroyed my mind, because there's something you need to, like, you know, as a white, typically cis, you know, you need to understand other people's experiences. And that really, that opened up a world for me that I hadn't seen before, that now I
one of the nicest things about, you know, I should say, one of the most horrible things about meeting people with a public or, you know, famous or with some infamy or whatever you want to say, people know this person and they're sort of famous or famous. One of the most horrible things that I've experienced is when you fall out of love with them, you know, and trust me, like I watched for maybe 10 or 15 years of my adult life. I would say from the time I was maybe 18 until I was maybe 30, 35, thereabouts, I watched Law and Order. And then when I became an activist and I was like a feminist and a loudmouth for survivors of sexual assault, you know, SVU became like the only place in public spaces and mainstream spaces before the Me Too movement, before it was always dealing with like sexual crimes and crimes that have to do with like violations against women. And I was so deeply, you know, I watched that thing all the time. Like, you know, people would be like, you're just, you know, something's wrong with you. You're just watching all of this like abuse all day long. But it was the only expression in the mainstream media that represented me and the kind of trauma I experienced as a survivor of sexual assault and sexual molestation and sexual violation. So, you know, so you've been in my head and in my reality, in my, you know, as like this is one of the ways that a woman could become a person who would either fight back against this thing, that would participate in the fight against the people who would perpetrate this thing, or the person who would provide a safe space or at least an outlet for survivors to either get justice or to articulate their pain or to acknowledge it or to make sense of it, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's weird. I think a lot of the people that watched the show needed an advocate, and it was, something to believe in.
Trauma, it's very difficult to, because trauma is different for everyone. It's very difficult for any one program, one show to say, okay, this is how we do it, and this is the truth of how it is.
Right.
And I don't believe that anyone can do that because there's such a multiplicity of different experiences. But for me, I was interested in it as a topic, and the fact that it was a topic on, and nothing. I mean, it was still beautiful, mostly white women, on screen. So it had its limitations. I mean, it was a part of the movie TV industry, so it can't do everything. But for me, it was a lifesaver because it reminded me every week, every day when it was on syndication, it reminded me that I didn't have to, wallow in shame, and I didn't have to hide my experience. So that was integral for myself as a young, emerging, activist against sexual violation.
Which is
so I want to say that when I met you, all of this to lead up to when I met you, I was so giddy and excited to meet anybody. Just like when I met Mariska Hargitay, I was super excited to meet her. When I saw Ice-T in the airport.
Oh my God. I saw
And I think maybe a lot of people had talked to him that day because I saw him in a little town called Urbana-Champaign. And we were both going through the airport, which is a tiny airport.
Tiny, yeah.
And I was talking to him, and he was, busy and it hurt my feelings for a long time. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe he's just busy and he didn't have the space to make room for whatever the hell I was talking to him about that morning. But all I'm saying is that the entire crew. And so when I met you, and lots of people, you meet them and then they're horrid people or not horrid people, but they're having a horrid moment that you're just there for.
Right. Or they just, for whatever reason, don't meet your expectations. I've stopped wanting.
My expectations can be very fucked up in that, can I say fucked up here?
Yeah. And all of ours can, for real. I remember meeting Harrison Ford, who's my idol for the first time. And, I freaked out and how it is. But no one, he looked like a weird old man with an earring, and I was just like, oh, where's my Han Solo? Where's my Indiana?
We have these ideas about who people are when we haven't met them, and then we meet them, and then they often really disappoint us. And all that to say, Diane, you are the real deal. You're such a down to earth, easygoing, warm, always willing to
That is very kind. And it is very kind. Because that's the thing that bugs me most about a lot of people in the industry. They're flaky, they're like, yeah, I'm going to do that, and then they're just, you never hear from them again. Or people it's strange. You work with someone on a film and you're together all day, every day for 4 months. And you're like, oh, we're friends now. And then you're like, that's it. You never hear from them again.
Yeah. I mean, that's the life. That's the life of those of us who choose to move around so much and we don't have the same exact community.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that I've decided to make my own community. What a long time ago I learned, I didn't grow up with family, from my story that I left when I was born. My father never really came forward to say, this is my kid. So I led a life that was very, unstable for a long time because I moved from place to place. Whoever could have me, whoever would have me, that's where I would be. And so I didn't really have a lot of family, and I've spent a lot of my life searching for family, wanting family, trying to figure out, how do I get this thing called family? This thing
and making your own family.
This thing that everybody else has that I didn't have. How do I get it? And I learned really early that if you open your home, then people will come and go. And if you remain stable, and if you have the same phone number, and you have the same address, and you have the same the sameness, if you are the steady
constant,
then people will return to you. And
by the way, the house is incredible. You're putting in the kitchen too. When I was there, it was that was wild with the kitchen counters and stuff. And I can't wait to see how it's done. And by the way, another thing that all my fans went berserk over Phoenix being missing. Like, it was like a huge thing. Like, it was
I
like
know.
everybody.
Phoenix was found. Phoenix, the dog, now has become a survivor because she was missing for, I think, 4 or 5 days. And she
in Brooklyn, everyone in Brooklyn. Right. Yeah.
In Brooklyn. She's a 15 to 17 pound dog. She's not very big at all. And it's kind of very like spindly and like a little bit afraid of people. And she ran away and from the dog walker, and just disappeared. And we had no idea. But she survived.
And she's back. Zuri's gotta be happy. As like I can't
happy. For 5 days, she was on the run, on the loose, and she found herself behind an MTA building, and an MTA worker
really
fed her for 3 days.
Oh,
and then
wow!
On the 3rd day, she allowed herself to be picked up and taken in. And then somebody saw a post that we had online. Thank you to the thousands and thousands of people who shared that post, and it got to the person who said, I think that's Phoenix. And then we connected, and then we went there, and Phoenix was Phoenix, and Phoenix is back.
The relief must have been like, I've lost, I've had animals run away before and it's like the most, it's the most disturbing. You're just like, it's nothing but like heartbreak, and thank God for the MTA worker too. That felt like
thank God for the MTA worker who found her and immediately reached out and said, hey, I think this dog might be Phoenix. Can you please contact us? And it was great. I mean, it was wonderful and relieving because my kid was feeling so guilty. It's like, oh my God, I moved to Jamaica for 1 year and then my dog ran away. Was it because she felt abandoned? And
all that stuff that comes up with it that has nothing to do with her, but it's just happened. Sometimes things just happen.
Yeah. So I'm excited that Phoenix is back in the arms of safety. And
I'm like all over the place, but we're talking about Kindred on the Rock, this intentional community that you started in Jamaica. This has all kinds of implications. Like I read all your posts, and it's so fascinating. Like there was a great one where you're talking about a Black woman owning land and owning a lot of land, and you know what I mean. And this whole like journey of what it's like. I always think about that in like a cultural sense. Cause like, me inside, I'm Jewish, and then my parents converted to Mormonism, so I grew up Mormon. Yeah, I know. It's like, so I'm my own Messiah. Basically that's it, Staceyann.
Right,
like it cuts down on the wait time and everything's easy. But like there's, anytime I'm in Israel or if I'm in Eastern Europe, where my people were from, and you see the things they went through, and you feel like this modicum of success, and if they're looking down on you now, and all the people that lost their lives so that you could get to where you are, and that insane journey, and that post just struck me so much because it's just such a rare thing in life for there to be like true ownership of anything. And even though you don't really own it, right? It belongs to the universe and all that kind of stuff, but you're the steward of it for now. And the title's in your name, right? Like it's real. And then,
that as an idea contradicts with, the idea that it's a community space,
Yeah.
But I'm still working through so much of that. Like, how do you own something and make it a community space? Because, essentially, legally, when it comes right down to it, you get to make all the decisions.
Right.
And then that's a conversation that's still happening. Like, we're going to
making sure everyone feels welcome enough that it's they're part of it. Yeah.
Yes. Like, how do you propose ideas for the community to do things? How do you facilitate it without feeling like, oh, this is really I'm just telling people what to do.
Yeah.
And so it's a process. You have to, in Jamaica, the class structure is pretty tight, pretty rigid. So who's at the bottom is very much who's at the bottom. There's a kindness between the classes. I think that there's a kindness between people in Jamaica that I don't necessarily find, here in the US as a whole, outside of like specific communities. But the class structures are still pretty rigid, and I had my work cut out for me. As like, how do you do this? How do you find a space? How do you connect? How do you have people of different classes connect in a real way? But I think, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to be on the journey with folks and figure it out and shift if things become necessary. Whatever ideas I have now, I'm willing to shift them within the context of a shared community. And Kindred on the Rock will become a place where it already is a place where people come to hang out and be and spend time. I mean, the work of it is very much, it's that renovation that you walked into in New York City times 100 because now
it's acres and acres and acres and animals and goats. And like, I saw that picture of Zeri holding the chicken. I'm like, oh God. Like, it's, one of the things that I always love to do, which has been really hard lately, losing all my homes. But one of the things that I always try to do is, like you said, be constant. And my friends would always call my home, because I didn't really have any family either. And they used to call my house, like from Harry Potter, the room of requirement. It was anything they needed it to be. Like my house was anything they needed it to be. And then when I finally got the land upstate, and I wanted everyone to feel like it was theirs.
You invited me the first day we met. You invited me. You said, come up.
It's amazing. You come up.
I was like, okay.
Like, okay, weirdo. But it was one of those places. One of the things I tried to do is give everyone a spot. So like everyone had a spot on the land that was theirs, that when they come up, if they wanted to put like a bench, they wanted to buy something and put it there. They wanted to have a little plot of land for a garden. They wanted to bury some of their mom's ashes, whatever it was.
How many acres did you have?
It was small, but it was like, so with the state land next door, it was 100 acres, just like isolated.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. There's a lot. It was a lot. Only 4 of it that were like manicured, that, you had to get on the mower and then I built all the stuff that you have, I started learning how to farm in greenhouses, and started learning how water efficiency in cisterns, and, built a self-generating pond that, would aerate. And so I had 100,000 gallons of fresh water that you could swim in, but also had bog plants, that was self-filtered from the 30% of the surface area was covered, all that kind of stuff. That's
pretty amazing.
And learned how to make root cellars and how to ventilate them so I could store all the food. Because I know it sounds stupid. It was really funny. I ran into one of my neighbors once when I learned masonry and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was building a mailbox, this big stone thing to put the mailbox in. And one of the neighbors, he was just like, I didn't realize you were a prepper. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm prepping in case Trump wins. It's like the opposite of why he was prepping for everything, right? And I still kind of feel that way. I think there's, I was talking to this new friend who's an author. I don't know if you know her, Tiffany Drayton, who she wrote this, it's Black American Refugee, this amazing book, worth picking up. And we feel like this impending thing. I don't know if you feel it too, that there's something coming. There's a reckoning, or there's a dissolution of society as it was, that's going to require a rebuilding.
Well, it's already shifted, but I think that we aren't sure if the systems are going to break down further. I think that the pandemic broke down quite a few of our systems, especially the systems that depended on big businesses to make them work. So when one big business wasn't able to, then so many people couldn't get water, or their phones didn't work, or, the bodies, from the hospital couldn't be transported and buried because, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people didn't necessarily have one company handling thousands of bodies.
Yeah.
So we didn't have anyways.
And toilet paper. Yeah. Everything from bodies being buried to toilet paper. I mean, it was insane.
And I think what's going to happen going forward is that either the big companies are going to become bigger and therefore have even
major
more
monopoly.
Control,
yeah.
Or we're gonna. Some of us are splintering. I mean, me going to Kindred on the Rock and trying to make a space where we have our own water, and we're trying to figure out how to put up solar. I mean, that stuff is super expensive because, as I said, 200 years ago, people used to just go and just dig a pit and make their own well.
No big
their
deal.
own well, or they would make their own like way to get rid of waste matter. But now there are stipulations with the government and with the authorities that say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't be off the grid, you can't be on the grid.
That drove me nuts. Yeah, you can't be off the grid, but you can't be on the grid. But you got to be somehow tied to the grid so that we can buy it back from the grid. And it's even harder too, like getting products like that to Jamaica. Like the cost makes it extremely high,
prohibitive. And so what we're asking, we usually ask people who are coming to visit, bring us a bag of things that we might need.
Ooh.
From like, gardening shears to, pitchforks to, a pickaxe or a hoe or and people can also help us by, sending money. They can send money to the Venmo. We have a Venmo that is up on my IG page, or Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, all of that. We take all kinds of money. You can send us $1, you can send us $5, you can send us $30. God knows you could send us $1 million. We wouldn't cuss you out.
No, you wouldn't be upset with it. And I'll post all the links to all that stuff on the show page and on my stuff as well too. I wonder if there's a way, because right now I am technically homeless, which is interesting. And but I have a storage unit upstate it's mostly full of tools. And they need a home. Like they need a home.
Maybe somebody's listening who's got
enough money for the shipping container. Seriously.
Yeah, or a shipping business who can just kind of help us and say, okay, we'll ship it for you. We won't charge you. Help us. I'm willing to take that stuff and
all that stuff. Like I always have a feeling things need to be used. I think they get really sad when they're not used. Everything needs a purpose.
And break and freeze up. And how are those cats of yours?
They're pretty funny. So one lives with me, Velvis, who's ridiculous. And
I don't know why your cat is called Velvis. Is it Velvis?
He's a velvet Elvis. He was born with alopecia of all things. So he was just like velvety smooth. And then, when you're coming up with names for like an entire litter of kittens, you got it. Like one was named like Pooh Leg Pete, like it's just like they just end up with random names. But the two that are left are Velvis, who lives with me, and Adventure Cat that lives with one of my best friends in Michigan. And he's got just like a horde of them. So they're alive. And it's really funny. I've only got one dog left. So I'm down to one dog and one cat, which is, this is an improvement over having between 5 and 10 animals running around at any given point in time.
And the thing about animals, particularly dogs and cats, is that, the human lifespan is much longer than theirs. So we really have to care for them from beginning to end.
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when they go. I just lost one earlier this year, and it was just like, it was brutal. It was the first one that I ever had to put down that didn't die naturally. So you feel like you're a part of it, then you're like, is this the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? It was absolutely brutal.
But it's pretty amazing that you get to see something come into being, because and you watch it live its whole life with joy. I mean, because most animals have such, pleasure in the smallest of things. And then you send them on their way. So you get to be a witness to their whole life, which is kind of magical, because humans don't really get to do that unless they're parents, which comes with its own, but I suppose most people who have animals in their family think of those animals as their children. So they might have the same kind of sorrow.
It's weird. Like I talked to my mom about it, because my oldest sister died of cancer when she was really young. She had cancer for about 4 years and then died when she was 8. And definitely, it's not, the human and animal thing. I wouldn't even compare it, right? Because I wouldn't diminish.
But it's in the same family of because, especially people who see their animals as family members.
Right. Which I do since I never had kids, but it's,
the sorrow is not nearly as much like the potential. You don't think about the potential. Like when a kid dies, you think about the life they would have lived. Whereas the animal, when it dies, I mean, most times if it lives until it's old, it lived a good life.
It lived a good life.
And so there's, yeah.
I would say to my buddies, it's like, cause it's funny, like my friends, it would, for the first time, when you're taking care of, especially a lot of animals, they're like, this is as much work as my kid. I'm like, yeah, but the stakes are much lower. Like the stakes are a lot lower.
And it's a lot more work, with children, you begin with a lot of work, and the work gets less and less as you get older.
Right.
And eventually you won't have to do any work for your children. I mean, maybe you're trying to,
yeah,
you're just working on the relationship with them and trying to keep them close and trying to be in a good relationship with them. But you're not going to be helping your daughter, most times, unless there's special circumstances, you're not helping your 18-year-old daughter get dressed unless she really wants some help for something special. But with animals, no matter how old they get, you're doing the same thing that you do for them when they're young.
Yeah.
You have to feed them. You have to keep them safe. You can't leave them alone in the house.
No, gotta wipe their butts. Yeah.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Yeah.
I've loved them so much though. Like it's one of those things. I remember when my first dog died, which wasn't that long ago. Oh, I loved Father Ted, a priest. He was a gentleman and a poet. They're just the best. You know, one of those dogs that's like so good that everyone gets a dog that looks like him because they think it's going to be the same, and you're like, it's not the same. Like he was just one of those entities that was like he was a soul. He wasn't a dog. Any form he would have been in, he would have been the same guy. Like just this entity. But all I could think about is like, wow, I want to get to heaven if there is a heaven, because all I want to do is be good enough to be with the animals again. Just be good enough to be with the animals again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But so at Kindred and the Rock, you guys have all kinds. I love the goats. Like
well, we have 11 goats now.
Oh my God!
One of whom is Jeffrey, and then we've got there was one that came and it was called Snow White, and Zuri said absolutely not. We named Snow White, which there are problems with the goat arriving with a name and then changing its name.
Yeah,
but, I think
do the goats know their name? Like, are they do they know? Will Jeffrey come when you go, Jeffrey?
No, nobody comes when you say Jeffrey. Everybody says, get away from me. But I don't know. I think over time, these goats will have a different relationship with us. They also are new. We're new to them. This farm, we got it this year. So
yeah. So everything's new. And are they eating goats? Are they milk goats? Are they grass cutting goats? Are they all of the above?
I'm not really sure. They're grass eating goats for sure. We have to move them from their house to down to the pasture, to the land, to eat all day, and they do nothing but eat and poop all day.
Yeah.
And then they come back home in the evening, and then they sleep and they eat a little bit in their house.
Yeah.
And then the next morning you take them out to
take them back out again.
And some of these goats, in Jamaica, curried goat is a really big thing. So
very tasty.
Some of them will be eaten over time. I haven't figured out how we're going to do that yet with oh my God, everybody knows their first name and is eating them. But whatever, we're not in the business of not providing food for people when food is available for people to eat. So we'll work that out. So there's the food stuff. We also have some chickens who we're not going to eat those chickens. They are laying chickens, and then they provide lots of eggs that we have.
Lots of eggs. I saw they're cooking her own eggs this morning. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm,
at 10, cooking her own breakfast. That's impressive.
She's definitely, I was having a moment this morning, oh my God, she's nobody's in the kitchen with her. And she's got her little phone call on, and she's to the side, and she's cooking and chatting and saying, these eggs taste a little peppery. Do you think we feed the chickens too much pepper?
Oh my God, are you serious? But there is nothing like an egg that comes straight out of your own coop. There's nothing like that.
And it's especially if it's, and she was talking about how tiny these eggs are. They're so much tinier than the ones you get in the supermarket.
Right, because they're not pumped full of hormones and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And yeah,
we talked about that for a while. But what's interesting is that I left Jamaica 26 years ago, because I was attacked for being a lesbian.
Yeah.
I was, attacked by about a bunch of boys who sexually assaulted me. And when I came up from that experience, I said, I'm not living here anymore. And I left for New York, which, New York is the queer capital of the world, I think.
Yeah.
And so I came here in search of the freedom and the space to be a lesbian in a safe way. And for 25 years, I've been, a professional lesbian, so to speak. I've been practicing my lesbian.
You're doing a very good job. Yeah. You're doing a very good job.
I have my lesbian license now for 25 years and have been very happy as a lesbian. But in that large swell of the Black Lives Matter movement with the, Amadi, and with the death of the George Floyd, the, Trayvon Martin, all of those things I have. And then the pandemic on the heels of that, I thought I really have to get out of New York. And that's kind of how I ended up in Jamaica again. Because, everybody was kind of going home to either their parents or their land that they had or the city that they knew.
Right. Wherever other place they could go to escape.
Yes. And so my friend had a house in Jamaica, and she said, come with your kid. There's a pool on the compound, and you can come and just be here and not be locked up with the sound of those sirens and with the refrigerator trucks outside
with the bodies. Yeah.
So I fled New York again, which was a kind of interesting experience because I thought I was going home for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I just never came back.
I remember when you left, you're like, oh, there's a pool here and there's swimming every day. And I'm like, wow, that sounds great. But how's your relationship with Jamaica now? Because it's the source of so much.
It's interesting. I call myself the prodigal, which is, the.
That's the name of my company is Prodigal Daughter for the last 30 years.
Really? And yeah. I think my next work will be called The Prodigal, which is, gal is a Jamaican word for girl.
Girl, yeah.
And prodigal, of course, is the return.
The return, yeah.
Yes. So I think I came home and I brought my kid and I watched her have this amazing experience in Jamaica. And I also was a part of, I became beneficiary to this amazing change that has been happening in Jamaica. And I have to raise my hat to organizations like We Change in Jamaica, Jamaicans for Justice, Rebel Women, J Flag. You have so many of these organizations that are on the ground doing the work of change.
And so it is changing.
It is changing. Absolutely. It's changing. It's changed already because now saying that you're gay in public doesn't immediately mean the mob is coming at you to mow you down.
The threat of immediate violence. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm saying that carefully because there's always
a threat. Yeah.
And it depends on who you are, what class you're in, how much space you have to have a queer safe space inside. How much walls you have, how much space you have, how many of your community members you can invite into your home, which is why Kindred on the Rock is a little bit of an amazing space in that it's a lot of space that we can invite a lot of people and create the kind of community we want around issues like queerness, around issues like class, around issues like race, around conversation, women's survival space. We can have a retreat for a weekend. We can house, 14 or 15 people right now.
The bunk beds went in. The bunk beds went in.
And I just bought a bunch of sheets for them. I'm hoping that when I pass through customs, that they won't
they're not gonna give you that.
They're gonna give me hell for the sheets. But right now the beds are without sheets, and so I'm
gotta bring the sheets.
So I'm excited about what we can create, but I also know that my relationship with the activist community in Jamaica has been cyclical, as in I was one of the first, if not the first, I think I was the first gay person to come out in mainstream media, on HBO, on Broadway, on Oprah, in the New York Times. I mean,
yeah, very publicly. Yeah, very publicly.
I was a licensed public practicing lesbian, and because I had that space, that certainly generated quite a bit of conversation in Jamaica. But I also know that before I came out, there were people. Brian Williams is an activist who actually died a few years ago quite violently in Jamaica. He had a little club called the Entourage, where I was 20 years old and not sure what being lesbian meant, but going to this, it really was like a little living room.
Just like a hole in the wall where everyone could just hang out and be.
And it opened up and that we could go and say we're going to the gay club. There were parties being held, in the hills and on the flats and, just about everywhere. There were people who opened their homes. So the work was going on long before I I came out, and the work has continued since then. Activists like I don't know if it's okay to call all these names, but there are lots of activists in Jamaica, lots of queer people who are taking up space and speaking the multiplicity of identities that exist in the Jamaican society. Because a part of the problem with queerness is that this white mainstream American queerness doesn't necessarily represent all of who exists globally, and certainly not everybody in Jamaica, because
it doesn't even represent like the white queerness like of America, right? You know, it doesn't even represent so how is it going to encompass like everything?
Yeah. So I find that now when I gather, like, Jamaica is currently having Pride, and there are lots of activities, and I performed at one of the activities. The people you find at those spaces are quite diverse, in terms of class, in terms of culture, in terms of, age, in terms of, identification.
Right, where they're from on the island. Because it's a really, like, people don't understand. Jamaica's like really, it's wild. It's got big hills, it's got mountains, it's got the beaches, it's got, like you said, the flats. It's got, it's a really diverse ecosystem.
Like cities and, and then you have the rural communities that are really close to the city, which is where Kindred is. Kindred is a really, like, Point Hill, where we are.
Yeah.
It's a pretty rural community, but it's only, it's half an hour from Spanish Town and 1 hour from Kingston.
You're kidding.
So, I know. So it's like, it's rural, but those people they're not like completely cut off from society. Many of them work in the city and come back home to the village. I mean, like, it's a very, like, I don't know everything about the community, and I'm still learning. I'm still in the space where I'm really working to learn what it means to belong to this community and to take up space in it and to make space for other people. I tell them all the time, sometimes when I meet my neighbors and they're like, "Oh, you're so down to earth." And I have to remind them that I am coming into your backyard.
Right.
I'm Jamaican, but I wasn't raised in Point Hill, so this is not my community. So I'm asking you to open your door and accept me. So I definitely have to make space
and
for
humble.
You.
Right, humble. Bring it because you're from Spanish Town, right?
No, I'm from Montego Bay, actually.
Are you from Montego Bay, really?
Yeah, I'm from like 2.5, 3 hours away.
I don't remember. Yeah, that's pretty far. It's pretty far.
Montego Bay is like a tourist.
It's a tourist trap. Yeah, it's like
so I saw tourists, on the beach, walking down the street. It was Montego Bay's standard tourist world. But it's been this like amazing experience of being back in Jamaica and rediscovering and discovering, because I never grew up in Jamaica. I mean, I never grew up in when I say grew up, I mean, like, I left Jamaica at 24. So my adult self has never really been in Jamaica.
Right.
As a college student, I was leaving, and I never had a job. I wasn't earning yet. I didn't have a house for myself. I had
none of those things that make building your own life, right? In a place. Yeah.
Yes. And so whatever ideas I had about Jamaica are also complicated by, I'm having my first grown-up experience in Jamaica, where I have to run a house and I have to have employees. And,
and what it is, when it's your name on the deed, it's like, ooh.
I have to pay bills.
Yeah. There's a weight that settles on you too. There's like a freedom, and it's also like a weight of responsibility for so many people and so many things. And
I just pictured the weight and the freedom. And so I'm having like this balloon pulling you up, but you also have this weight pulling you down, and somehow you're in the middle being stretched.
That's exactly how it is. You just like, and then you have to maintain, and you have to find peace in the stretch, where you're just like, how
are you? I've been really navigating, like, my big question now is, where is home? Like before, I think as a young lesbian, I was like talking about sexuality and talking about gender and talking about my LGBTQIA experience. And, I think I moved swiftly into, being a mother, or where do I belong? Those
right, being a poet, being an author,
But now I'm really interested in, what is home for people? What does that look like? How do you know when you're home? Can home shift? When it shifts, how does it affect you? And what are the good things about shifting home? And what are the frightening things about shifting home? And I want to throw back that question to you and say, where is home for you these days? And how are you negotiating the the question of home.
It's so weird because it's been like, it'll make me cry, but the loss of every home that I had, like, because I was always afraid of losing my home. So one of the things that propelled me to try and be successful and make money was so that I would always have a roof over my head and I wouldn't have to depend on anyone else. This would be my home. And I tried to make every home I had as beautiful and as peaceful and as welcoming. Like you said, like everyone belonged. Everyone belonged. And to go from having, at 16, like right after I was 16. And it was funny when I always talk to like kids, they're like, wait, what'd you do? And I'm like, look, if things aren't great at home, you can leave two ways. You can drop out of high school, you can graduate early. Like just, pick the one that's smarter. Pick the one that's smarter and get the hell out. And so it's weird. Like until I was like 16, we grew up in DC and then Colorado. But those didn't feel like, I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And then when I originally left home, my parents were worried that I was too young. So instead of sending me to the schools that I wanted to go, they sent me with my older sister in Hawaii.
Mm.
And it was a very interesting experience. So, and the school was in a remote, like north shore of the island. And it was a very interesting experience being a hated minority in a place of being. It was a real awakening, and it was also the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced. So Hawaii, like there's something so special about it. It was like, those formative years. And then I ended up living all over the world. And then by the time I was like 19, living in New York, and I always wanted to come here. So like New York feels like home. It feels like the energy and the people, and just like yesterday, I couldn't even stop. I was on the subway and I just couldn't stop, like surreptitiously snapping pictures of people because everyone's so varied and interesting. And you can just see their stories written on their faces, or if they're bored coming home from work, or if they're tired, or if they're reading a book, and what book are they reading? And like, what are they absorbing? And so much stuff by osmosis, like that you don't pick up anywhere else. Like, you have a good conversation with the cab driver. I can tell you how long the pass is to be in the Kashmiri region, right between Pakistan and India. Like to go visit your family, things that, if you just ask, and everybody's so willing to share. So it's only been a couple months now. So my dad passed away, and I happened to be homeless, and I've been living with my mom in Florida, and it's wild because Florida's just awful. Like there's a lot of it that's like awful, right? There's a lot of Trump, a lot of people that have like, let's go Brandon bumper stickers on their cars. Mm-hmm. And it's this, it's a very
I considered moving to Florida when I was really broke and Zuri was a baby. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to make this work? And I considered Florida, but I could not make the leap. And perhaps if I had someone there who I could go live with,
right,
maybe I could be there, but I just couldn't pick up myself to go rent an apartment in Florida. It was just after Trayvon Martin had been
God. Oh, so God. Yeah. Which was astoundingly horrific. I mean, I think about that kid.
How old is your sister? Are you the only ones left? Or were there only three of you?
There are only three of us. So I'm the youngest, and the middle one that's around, she lives relatively close by, but we're not terribly close. But it's been really interesting getting to know my mother because when you leave at 16, I don't know this woman. She's just a stranger.
Is that the home you grew up in, or
no? So my parents, when they retired, they bought this place in the west coast of Florida, just kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like it's not even like close to any airports or anything like that. That's the beauty of it, though. So like the things that I've been trying to find that are so, and I'm trying to like redefine, to answer your question, what home is home just where I am? Is it that simple? Is it just that simple? Like, and how do you make that space for yourself to be, living amongst other people and people you don't know, or people that you should know and that you don't know very well? And my mom and I are doing this dance of politeness, in a really interesting sort of way. And, it'll break down occasionally. And I'm like, it's okay. You can be whatever you need to be. It's fine. But it's also finding the beauty in anywhere that you are. So even though it's hot and it's swampy and it's not my New York. And, my parents never had enough money to live on the beach, like they couldn't afford like beach places, but they live close enough to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 10, 15-minute bike ride away to this magical beach that is like that aqua that just goes on forever and melts with the sky. They become the same color, and it's so clear, and it happens to be, and there are no hotels and no houses or anything. It's like state parks, so there's just nothing. It's just wild. So if I'm feeling bad and I don't want to cry, I don't want my mom to worry about me, I'll go to the beach and just sob. And every morning I've been swimming like a half mile, a mile in the ocean, and it happens to be the one place on Earth that's the best place to find prehistoric shark's teeth that are like 20 to 40 million years old. Random, right? 20 to 40 million years old. You can find all these like fossilized shark's teeth. It's so random. And
you should bring us some when you come to Kindred.
Oh, I will bring you tons. I love bringing around, and it's so fun because you can see what elements they fall out in, which I think is just such a good metaphor for everything. What they fall out in is what color they become. So, if they fall out in like copper, they end up with this like orange hue. It's a wild thing. And then my mom, who's never, after having a farm and all that land upstate, teaching my mom how to grow. So we've started like this patch of veggies and stuff, and she's amazed. She's amazed that these things they come up, and then you can eat them, and it's like, yeah, this is like the best way. And so like I may have lost all this stuff, but I'm still trying to navigate what exactly. It's home. And then when I come back to the city, every time I land, like ever since I got here, so I'm 45 now, so it's like I've been here about the same amount of time. Every time my flight, no matter where I've been in the world, it touches down in New York, I'm like, sigh of relief. And I think that, and like we're talking about, it was really interesting. A couple podcasts ago, I had all these guys who were amazing. They're called the queer money guys. And they're two finance guys, but
I'm queer and I need money.
Yeah, no, it's like exactly right. And they specialize. They actually did this study. They hired a firm to do this poll, and it was amazing just how marginalized the queer community can be when it comes to money and finances and all this kind of stuff. And you realize, and I realized when I was talking to them, because they're like in Ohio or somewhere great, right? Like that all the people that I got to know didn't have to fight because they were all in New York or they were all in LA, where there were these supportive communities and everything was okay. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you, as someone that did have to run. What advice would you give the kids that are at home, that are struggling, that are in these places where it's not okay and it's not free and it's not normal? And
I would say you have to read the stories of people who have survived similar point of sorrow or terror that you are experiencing. One of the things that helped me to survive is that I knew that it could be done. And once you know it can be done, you can keep pushing. You can find it in you to get through the next hour, get through the next 5 hours, get through the next day, get through the next week, get through the next year. And you live in a world now where there's no one on the planet who doesn't know that there's safe space for queer people somewhere in. And if you kind of keep a plan in your head, like I'm going to New York, or I'm going to Austin, Texas, or I'm going to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or Miami, or, like there's somewhere close by, and you have to figure out how it is that you're going to make community. And because of the internet that we didn't have when we were young, you can like actually seek out community. There are like tons of pages and like organizations that you can just from an online position, seek them out, build relationships so that when you're ready to really make the big leap, you can do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you can find your own community and find your own family.
Yeah.
But you gotta look for it.
But the biggest advice I can give you, I mean, I can tell you, oh, you can write if you want to write, you can travel on a bus, you can like try and make, you can apply for jobs wherever you want to go. I think young people are smart enough to know those things. But the thing that is consistently needing to be affirmed for young people is that if you just hang on, that there would be opportunity, space, time for you to get where you want to go and to be who you want to be.
Yeah.
It's so easy to think that this moment is every moment. But when I was like young and maybe like, I don't know, 25 or something, I was dating a girl who took me home for Thanksgiving, and her father, who was from the Caribbean, refused to come to the
dinner table. One of those. Okay.
Not just refused to come to the dinner table, but stayed in the bedroom, shouting about obscenities at myself and the rest of the family, and just going on and on and on. Cut to 20 years later, 25 years later, he's one of my favorite people. I'm one of his. When he and I talk, he consistently references that I'm the daughter-in-law that got away. Things change.
Things change.
Things change. When I came out when I was 20 years old in Jamaica, 12 boys dragged me to a bathroom and sexually assaulted me in the attempt to try to change my mind, to punish me for what had seemed to be like an atrocious act on my part. It was horrific. It was terrible. And then I had nowhere to go. I had nobody to tell. All I could do was try to get myself out of Jamaica. 20 years later, 25 years later, I'm walking in the supermarket. I'm watching these young trans people dressed up to the nines in Prada, swinging handbags, in bodies that look male to me.
Yeah.
Taking up space, calling me. I just posted a story about being in the airport and wearing the Queer is Here t-shirt and asking the security guard to take my picture and tell her, make sure you get the queer, because it's Pride Month and I want everybody to know I'm a lesbian in case anybody's looking at
in case anyone forgets.
Yes, in case anybody's looking at me. And she's like, well, I'm here looking at you. And then she took the picture and she smiled and she grinned and she said, when you're coming back, make sure you look up or something. This work can happen. And in full view of everybody publicly, I could see some of the old ladies frowning, but I could see some of the old ladies going, these young people crazy. But it's
change. I think that's the best advice.
They always change. They always change. They have to change. And you just have to be around, ready for when they change. You have to be a part of the change if you want to effect the change. You have to know it's coming. You have to believe in it. You have to lead into it. You have to find the people who are doing it. You have to insist that it happens. Change is coming. It is already here. There's more to come. Just know in your heart of hearts, in your belly, in your uterus, in your vulva, in your nipple, in your tinny, in your ears, in your tongue. Just know that change is coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's already here. More is still coming. We can only evolve. As much as some of these people with their taking away of LGBT rights.
Oh my God.
Taking away of abortion rights. They're white.
The SCOTUS ruling, that was insane yesterday about guns. That was insane.
Now in New York City, you can you can carry your gun.
Sweet.
Like, now you have more people that you can shoot in New York City. It's so crazy. But you have to know that change is happening. And if you listen to all of the naysayers and if you focus on all the bad news without being in a community of people who remind you that things change, because there was a time when women couldn't get abortions at all. And they were like, now you have people who are telling stories like, this is what my abortion, when it happened, and this is what happened. And I went with my friend to get her abortion this week. Like, we live in a world where there's space for that now, where 100 years ago, there wasn't any space for that. So you have to remember that as much as, this backlash that they're having, it's because so much change has happened and they upset as fuck and they want to roll it back. but not going back. Maybe we take 2 steps back, but we're about to take 7 steps forward.
That's what it is. I always thought that, like, with Trump, like, I was really depressed, when he first got elected, it's like many of us were, it was like getting punched in the sternum, right? You're like, how? And then once you realize, or I realized, that right before any big societal change, there was the death throes. There's the death rattles of the old. They fight back. They don't want to die. And so they push and pull. And then eventually they die.
And these young people now, they're insisting that they're not going to work, 16-hour days for nobody. They're not going to do, like, they're going to be out as a motherfucker. They want, like, their bosses to be wearing queer t-shirts. The poor straight man who is homophobic in his heart of hearts. No.
Sipping in his pride mug like it's rainbow.
In order to not be canceled, he's got to be out there in his chaps. You know what I mean? He's got to be out there doing his shit. Like, you got to show up. They got to court gay money now. Like, oh yeah, all these big companies. I just did Ralph Lauren just had me and Zuri for LGBT Pride.
That was amazing. By the way, did Carter shoot your photos?
I can't remember.
He's the guy that does most of the Ralph Lauren ads in the polo, but he's a friend of mine. I got to ask him later today.
You have to ask him.
Yeah.
Whoever did it was like so.
Those ads were amazing. Like those ads, it was like gorgeous.
It was great, but I feel as if it's been such a wide sweep of change that these people are now. But we can't let them. We have to push back because they really, really, really want things to change back to how they were. And they can if we don't push back. So just keep the pressure on and keep pushing, because 10 years from now,
well, that's what I always say. The moral arc of the universe, is long, but it bends toward justice. But the thing that bends it is us. We have to hold on to it and bend it down.
Yes.
And that doesn't just naturally go down. Yes, you have to hold it.
And the curve of that bend depends on how hard we pull.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to think, oh yeah, change is going to come. It's not my work.
No, someone else is going to do it. Yeah.
And not all of us are going to be in the Pride Parade with chaps on. But all of us can say to Aunt Lou or Aunt Meg, absolutely not. I know 2 gay people and that's not true.
Exactly.
We can, at the dinner table, we can wear a little rainbow during Pride. And they're like, what is that about? Oh, well, it's Pride Month, or we're celebrating gay people. So, yeah, I'm just wearing it. Or,
But I think that goes with all things too. You got to stick up, and you got to stick up in your own group. And when you see something that's not right, you got to say something, or you hear a joke that's not okay, you got to say something.
All oppression is connected.
Yeah.
The same 8 heterosexual men in the corner who are against abortion. They're the same ones who don't want queer people to be free. They're the same ones
guns.
Who want poor people to have money. And they're the same ones who want guns, and they're the same ones who want their wives to just like sit around the house and like bring them drinks.
Mm-hmm.
We have to push back and say, we are the majority. We who believe in freedom, we are the majority. You are only a dying gasp of air that we're just waiting for it to be extinguished. You are on your way out. A new day is dawning, and it is already here.
It is. Can I tell you one last thing? Do you know what I think? I've been paying a lot more attention. Obviously, like the last ages, trying to really pay attention. And what I think they're afraid of more than anything, they're afraid that people of color are going to treat people that are different, oppressed peoples, are going to treat them the way they treated everybody else.
And some people of color are going to treat them the same way that they treated us, because humans are humans.
Yeah.
But your own fear of, is not enough to keep people oppressed and keep them without the clean water. One of the things that we're working on in the community is how to get water, because where we are on the top of the hill, the National Water Commission does not come that high up. It doesn't have.
So you'd have to like, and how deep is there an aquifer or anything? Like how deep
I don't know exactly. We're sorting that out, but we have like catchments. We have like, I have a whole bunch of catchments on the land. And so what we're trying to do is like, we need a truck. Like, one of the things that we need is a truck so that I can truck water to people who need it around the community, because otherwise we have to like lug up the hill across the mountain to people with water. So Anybody who want to give us a truck,
and anybody want to, like, seriously, if anyone, like, if I had the money, I would absolutely pay for it in a heartbeat. Another thing that's in storage, I have one of those UTVs, it's like a mini pickup truck with the giant wheels. Like, it's like the white trash special, right? Like, it's like camo. It's got like a Diet Mountain Dew in the drink holder. Like, it's like full on.
The problem with Jamaica is that you can't bring a vehicle that's over 5 years old because they're trying to keep the.
No, this one isn't over 5 years old. This one is it's great, and it's like, for on the property, and it has a pickup bed that goes like this, so you can haul stuff just around the property. If anyone, like, I'll give it to you if anyone will pay for the shipping. But and you need a truck.
I'm all about it, but we need, like, and we need gloves and smaller things that we need. If you can send us packets of oatmeal, they're great for breakfast.
Oh my God, they are great for breakfast.
If you can send us sugar, if you can send us like rice, all of that is great for feeding people. So
I'll make sure that the address is up. And I'm so I'm dead serious about coming down as well. And it's really funny. There's the real Casey Novak. So the real Novak is a real Brooklyn ADA. Who is retired from the ADA's office at the moment. And she's been one of my best friends for 20 something years now. And she said that she wants to come down. She's a lawyer and she's a lesbian. So she's like, she feels like she's the entry ticket. She's like, can I come? And I'm like, you got it, girl. Like, you got it.
We would love it. We would love it. I mean, some of my friends are like, Staceyann, we don't give a fuck when you say we can come, because for like months now, you've been saying, yeah, I can give you a time. Yeah, I can give you a time. And then you're not giving us any time. So, bitch, we're coming right now, whether you want us to come or not. They bought tickets.
That's good. Well, one of the things that I specialized in, that I spent years studying on my property and the engineering of, is water catchment systems and cisterns.
Yeah, I don't know how to catchment situation. So we have we do have like water catchments the size of like living rooms in Florida.
Huge, yeah.
Like 8 of them. We have lots of water, but we have to figure out how to get the piping and pumps to get the water where we need it to go, because a lot of it is uphill. So to carry water from one place to the other is like hell.
Oh no, it's terrible. Like, this is another thing I specialize in like hydroelectric and pumping water up from different, and just like setting up windmills and solar powered ones as well too.
And the wind is pretty high up there, so we probably could use wind.
Yeah, windmill, like the actually windmills actually are kind of the most fabulous, and they have really cool ones these days that are different and beautiful and don't obscure the landscape as much, but can really pull like a huge volume of water uphill. And also too, it helps like aerate, because you need like all the the catchment areas like aerate, right, to keep them from getting mosquito infested and everything else.
Yeah. We haven't got any of that set up. We just have the catchments and they've got water in them. So like,
I'm gonna bring all my books. I'm gonna bring all my stuff and all my books. All my books on engineering water systems.
Come on down, and we can work it out. I mean, you've been such a good, an encouraging friend, a good voice to say, of course, Staceyann, you're going to do this. That sounds great. You should do it. I'm so grateful for your friendship and so grateful for this conversation.
I'm really grateful for your time too. And I know you're really short on time these days with everything going on. So I'll wrap it up, but thank you so much. And I'll make sure that everyone has the links to Kindred on the Rock and to all of your work, because it's invaluable. And it's oh my gosh, what was I reading the other day? And it was a quote I saw on something. It was, your pink push-up bra makes me think you're an intellectual or something like that.
Oh my God, that's like classic. That's like maybe 25-year-old Staceyann.
Amazing though, like amazing stuff. So thank you, Staceyann. Like, I appreciate everything, really. And I'm
having me on and for chit-chatting. I mean, like, I'm very, very glad that you and I both find the time to sit and chat, because too often we get too busy and we don't stop and do the things that are important.
No.
And friendship is important.
And it's always nice to know, like, I'm always rooting for you guys.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for you and Rachel. I'm rooting for Kindred on the Rock. I'm always rooting for you guys.
Yeah, you're a rooting kind of girl, and that's one of my favorite things about you. So
thanks, Staceyann.
Big love, and see you soon.
See you soon. All right, big love. And seriously, and I'm dead serious. Anyone wants to donate? All my stuff, all my tools, all my everything can go to Kindred on the Rock. I'd be more than happy to. Or maybe I'll get lucky and I'll get a big job soon. And you know what? Then I can pay for it to go down myself. I can accompany it. Yeah.
However it works, you and I are going to be friends for a long time.
Yeah, we will. Thanks, Staceyann. I appreciate it.
Peace and love.